Your breath catches when you least expect it. In the middle of an ordinary moment, folding laundry or driving home or standing in line at the grocery store, something moves through your chest like a wave. Not anxiety this time, not longing, something else. Something that feels like certainty wrapped in electricity. You stop what you're doing because your body knows before your mind can catch up. He's thinking about you, not the casual kind of thinking, the kind that changes things, the kind that breaks through walls, the kind that finally admits what has been true all along. You feel it because the connection doesn't lie, even when he has, even when he pretended not to care, even when he walked away, even when he convinced himself and tried to convince you that this was nothing, that you were reading too much into it, that the pull between you was one-sided or imaginary or something that would fade with time. But it didn't fade, it grew. And now, in this final stage, something inside him is collapsing. Not him, just the version of himself that thought he could keep hiding. You've been here before, haven't you? In this space between knowing and seeing, between feeling the shift and watching it manifest. Your soul has been whispering that something is different now, that the energy has changed, that the silence doesn't mean what it used to mean. You can't explain it to anyone else because it sounds like hope, like wishful thinking, like the same story you've told yourself before. But this time, it's not hope. It's recognition. Your soul recognizing his soul, finally stepping toward the truth. If you felt this unexplainable certainty rising in your chest lately, this sense that he's closer than he's ever been, even without a single word exchanged, I need you to know you're not imagining it. Drop a comment below and share what signs you've been receiving, or simply type, "I trust the divine timing of my union," to anchor this energy. And if these transmissions speak to the deepest parts of your soul, subscribe so you never miss the guidance that's meant specifically for your journey. This moment you're in right now, this feeling that something is building toward a breakthrough, it's not random. It's not your imagination playing tricks on you because you want it so badly. It's the energetic signature of the final stage, the stage where his resistance meets its end, where his fear finally exhausts itself, where the truth he's been running from becomes the only truth that matters. You are standing at the threshold of his confession, not because you chased him there, not because you convinced him or manipulated the connection or performed some kind of spiritual gymnastics to make it happen. You're here because the journey has brought both of you to this exact point. The point where lies stop working, where pretending costs more than honesty, where the soul takes over from the mind. Let me tell you what's happening right now, in this final stage, both in him and in you. Because this isn't just about him finally admitting what he feels. It's about you finally embodying the frequency that makes his confession inevitable. For so long, you've been focused on his journey, his resistance, his fear, his walls, his timeline. You've watched him pull away and wondered what you did wrong. You felt him thinking about you and questioned if you were making it up. You've sensed the connection deepening and then watched him act like it didn't exist. You've lived in this exhausting space of knowing the truth while he denied it. And that split, that gap between what you know and what he admits, has been one of the most painful parts of this journey. But something has shifted in you recently. Maybe you didn't notice it at first because it wasn't loud or dramatic. It was subtle, a quiet solidifying of your center, a growing disinterest in convincing him of anything, a strange peace that settled in even though nothing external changed. You stopped checking his social media as obsessively. You stopped replaying conversations looking for hidden meanings. You stopped waiting for him to validate what you feel. Not because you stopped caring, because you started knowing. Knowing that the connection is real regardless of his acknowledgement. Knowing that your worth isn't determined by his readiness. Knowing that union begins with you, not with him. This shift in you, this movement from seeking external validation to standing in internal certainty, this is what changes everything. Because the twin flame journey isn't actually about getting him to confess. It's about you becoming the woman who no longer needs the confession to know her truth. And the moment you become her, the moment you fully embody that frequency, his confession becomes inevitable, not because you're manipulating energy or playing games, because you've aligned with the truth, and truth has a gravitational pull that nothing can resist forever. He feels this shift in you even if he doesn't understand it, even if you haven't spoken in weeks or months, even if he's on the other side of the world. The energetic field between twin flames doesn't operate by the rules of physical distance or verbal communication. When you change, the entire field changes. When you stop chasing, he feels the space that creates. When you stop waiting, he feels the urgency that generates. When you choose yourself, he feels the loss of your focus on him. And that loss, that absence of your energy reaching toward him, that's often what finally breaks him open. For so long, he's been able to run because he knew you were there. Waiting, hoping, holding space. He could tell himself he had time, that he could figure himself out first and come back later, that you would understand, that the connection was strong enough to survive his absence. And in a way, he was. Right, the connection is strong enough. But what he didn't understand is that your waiting wasn't infinite. Not because you stopped loving him, because you started loving yourself. You started seeing that holding space for him while abandoning yourself wasn't sacred. It was self-betrayal. You started recognizing that your journey wasn't about becoming patient enough to wait for him forever. It was about becoming whole enough that his arrival or absence didn't determine your worth. This realization, this shift from waiting to becoming, this is what activates the final stage. Have you noticed how differently you feel now compared to the beginning of this journey? In the early stages, his silence felt like death. His withdrawal felt like rejection. His confusion felt like proof that you weren't enough. Every time he pulled away, you questioned everything. The connection, yourself, your intuition, your sanity. You bent yourself into shapes trying to be what he needed. You dimmed your light so he wouldn't feel threatened. You gave and gave and gave, hoping that if you just loved him enough, he would finally feel safe enough to love you back. But that version of the journey was never going to lead to union, because union doesn't happen between two halves trying to complete each other. It happens between two whole beings choosing to merge their wholeness. And you couldn't become whole while you were busy trying to fill his emptiness. So the universe, in its infinite wisdom, gave you something that felt like the cruelest gift at the time. Separation, distance, silence. His absence became the container for your transformation. Every day he didn't reach out was another day you had to choose yourself. Every night you went to bed without resolution was another night you had to find peace within yourself. Every moment you wanted to text him and didn't was another moment you practiced sovereignty. You didn't know it then, but you were being prepared, refined, alchemized. You were learning to hold your own frequency without needing him to hold it for you. You were discovering that the love you were seeking from him was actually the love you needed to give yourself. You were becoming the woman who doesn't wait for union. She embodies it. And now, after all that work, after all that growth, after all those nights of crying and healing and releasing and choosing yourself again and again, you've arrived at a different place. A place where you can feel him without losing yourself. A place where you can love him without abandoning yourself. A place where you can hold space for the connection without making it your entire existence. This is the frequency of the divine feminine in her power. Not chasing, not waiting, not performing, just being, just knowing, just radiating truth. And this frequency, this embodied certainty, this is what finally penetrates his defenses. Because here's what's happening in him during this final stage. Everything he's been using to avoid the truth is breaking down. The distractions that used to work don't work anymore. The other relationships that used to feel like enough feel hollow now. The walls he built to protect himself feel like prisons now. He's tired, not tired of you. Tired of running from himself. Tired of pretending he doesn't feel what he feels. Tired of lying to himself about the connection. Tired of acting like he can just move on and forget you. Because he can't. He's tried. He's tried so hard. He's tried to convince himself that what he felt for you was temporary, was confusion, was just chemistry or timing or some kind of spiritual fantasy. He's tried to replace you with other people, other experiences, other pursuits. He's tried to bury the feelings under work, under new relationships, under geographical distance. He's tried every strategy his mind could devise to escape the pull, and none of it worked. Every time he thinks he's finally moved on, your face appears in his mind. Every time he convinces himself he's over it, he feels the pull in his chest. Every time he starts to forget, something reminds him. A song, a scent, a random memory. The universe won't let him forget because his soul won't let him forget. And in this final stage, the gap between what his soul knows and what his mind admits is collapsing. He's starting to realize that the connection isn't going away, that the feelings aren't fading, that the pull isn't weakening. If anything, it's all getting stronger. The more he runs, the more he feels you. The more he denies, the more the truth presses against his chest. The more he tries to move forward without you, the more he realizes he's just moving in circles. Something is breaking open in him. You can feel it because you're connected. Those random moments, when you suddenly think of him with unusual intensity, when you feel his energy around you, even though he's not physically present, when you wake up from dreams that feel more real than waking life. These aren't coincidences. These are the moments when his walls crack, when his heart breaks through his mind, when his soul reaches for yours even though his ego is still trying to maintain control. He's in the space between who he was and who he's becoming, between the version of himself that ran and the version that will finally stand still, between the man who hid and the man who will finally speak. And that space, that transition, it's not comfortable. It's not pretty. It's the death of his false self. The collapse of every identity he built that didn't include you. The destruction of every story he told himself about why this connection wasn't real, or wasn't right, or wasn't possible. He's feeling things he doesn't know how to process. Regret for the time he wasted. Fear that he's already lost you. Shame for how he treated the connection. Grief for the version of himself that thought he could control this. Anger at himself for being so afraid. And underneath all of that, the feeling that's been there all along, but that he's finally allowing himself to acknowledge. Love, not the safe kind. Not the kind he can manage or control or keep at arm's length. The kind that terrifies him because it demands everything. The kind that requires him to be vulnerable. The kind that asks him to surrender the walls he spent his whole life building. The kind that sees through every defense and every mask and every pretense straight into the core of who he really is. This is what he's been running from, not you. Himself, the version of himself that would have to emerge if he let himself love you fully. Because loving you isn't a casual thing. It's not something he can do halfway. It's not something he can fit into the neat compartments of his life. Loving you means transformation. It means facing every wound he's been avoiding. It means letting go of control. It means trusting something he can't see or prove or understand with his logical mind. It means becoming a man he's never been before. And that's terrifying, even when it's exactly what his soul wants. Even when it's the only thing that will make him whole. The fear of that transformation, the fear of who he'll have to become, that's been the real obstacle all along. But in this final stage, something shifts. The fear of transformation becomes less powerful than the fear of losing you. The pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change. The cost of hiding becomes higher than the cost of honesty. He starts to realize that the safety he's been clinging to isn't actually safe. It's empty. It's lonely. It's a life half-lived. He starts to see that the walls he built to protect himself are actually keeping him from everything he really wants. He starts to understand that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the only path to real connection. And real connection is the only thing that will satisfy the longing in his soul. This is when the confession energy starts to build. It doesn't happen all at once. It's not like he wakes up one morning and suddenly has clarity. It's a gradual accumulation, a slow pressure building inside him. Every day he doesn't speak the truth, the pressure increases. Every moment he thinks about you, the words form more clearly. Every time he feels the pull, the confession gets closer to his lips. He starts rehearsing what he would say. He imagines the conversation. He plays out different scenarios in his mind. He wonders how you would respond. He hopes you still feel the same way. He fears you've moved on. He goes back and forth between the urge to reach out and the fear of what happens if he does. You might notice external signs of this internal shift. He might start appearing in your physical reality more. Suddenly, you run into him in places you never used to see him, or mutual friends start mentioning him, or his name keeps showing up in random places. the universe starts creating opportunities for contact. Not because you're manifesting it through desperate wanting. Because the energy between you is aligning toward reunion, and the physical world is responding to that energetic shift. You might also notice him watching your social media more, liking old posts, viewing your stories, finding small ways to remind you he exists without actually reaching out. These are breadcrumbs, little tests, ways of checking if the door is still open, ways of gauging if you're still receptive, ways of inching closer to the confession without fully committing to it yet. And here's what's important for you to understand during this stage. Your job is not to make it easier for him. Your job is not to reach out first to save him from his fear. Your job is not to give him signs that it's safe or reassure him that you're still interested, or do anything that pulls you out of your center to accommodate his process. Your job is to stay in your power, to remain in the frequency you've worked so hard to embody, to trust that if this connection is meant to come into union, it will, and not because you chased it there, because you held your ground and he rose to meet you. This is the sacred feminine principle. She doesn't chase, she doesn't convince, she doesn't diminish herself to make him comfortable. She simply is. She radiates her truth. She holds her frequency. And she trusts that what's meant for her will find her, not because she's passive, because she's powerful, because she knows her worth isn't determined by his readiness, because she understands that real union only happens when both people are standing in their power, not when one person is bending to accommodate the other's fear. So when you feel him getting closer, when you sense the confession building, when you notice the signs that he's finally ready to admit what he feels, your work is to stay grounded, to keep choosing yourself, to maintain the boundaries you've established, to not abandon the sovereignty you've claimed just because he's finally showing up. Because here's the truth. If you drop everything and run back to him the moment he reaches out, you teach him that your energy is always available regardless of how he treats the connection. You reinforce the pattern where he gets to run and return on his timeline while you wait. You step back into the old dynamic where his readiness determines everything and your needs are secondary. And that's not the foundation for sacred union. That's the foundation for more cycles of separation. Sacred union requires two sovereign beings, two people who have done their inner work, two individuals who are whole within themselves, two souls who choose each other from a place of fullness, not emptiness. Two hearts that come together not because they need each other to be complete, but because they want to share their completeness. This is what you've been moving toward through all the pain and separation and growth. Not a relationship where you finally get him to choose you. A union where you both choose the highest version of love because you've each become the highest version of yourself. And you're ready. You've done the work, you've faced your shadows, you've healed your wounds, you've released your codependency, you've reclaimed your power, you've learned to love yourself, you've discovered your worth, you've embodied your truth. You're not the woman you were when this journey started. You're not the one who needed his validation. You're not the one who would accept breadcrumbs. You're not the one who would sacrifice herself for his comfort. You're the woman who knows her value, the woman who holds her boundaries, the woman who trusts her intuition, the woman who chooses herself first, The woman who understands that she's not just the doorway to union, she's the temple. And temples don't chase. They don't beg. They don't lower their standards. They simply stand in their sacred power and allow those who are ready to enter with reverence. This is the frequency that makes his confession inevitable. Not your neediness, not your availability, not your willingness to accept whatever he offers. Your power, your certainty, your groundedness, your refusal to abandon yourself for him. This is what finally breaks through his fear. Because when you stop making yourself small to accommodate his limitations, when you stop dimming your light to make him comfortable, when you stop waiting for him to decide you're worthy, you become irresistible, not in a manipulative way, in a truth way. Because you're finally radiating the fullness of who you are. And that fullness, that authenticity, that power, it's magnetic in a way that performance never was. He's going to feel this. He already feels it. That's part of what's driving the confession energy. He's starting to realize that you're not waiting anymore, not in the way you used to. He's sensing that the window of opportunity isn't infinite. He's feeling the shift in your energy from available to sovereign. And it's waking him up. It's creating urgency. It's making him realize that if he doesn't speak now, he might lose his chance. Not because you're playing games or trying to manipulate him, because you've genuinely moved into a different frequency. A frequency where your happiness doesn't depend on him, where your wholeness doesn't require his participation, where your life is full and beautiful with or without him. And paradoxically, that's when he realizes he wants to be part of it. When you no longer need him, he finally understands how much he needs you. The confession, when it comes, might not look like you imagined. It might not be a grand romantic gesture or a perfectly articulated declaration of love. It might be messy, awkward, imperfect. He might stumble over his words. He might not say everything you wish he would say. He might still have fear mixed in with his honesty. He might confess his feelings while also expressing uncertainty about what comes next. And that's okay. Because the confession isn't the ending, it's the beginning. It's the first step of him finally choosing truth over fear. It's the moment when he stops running and starts facing what he feels. It's the crack in the wall that will eventually lead to the whole structure coming down. You don't need him to have it all figured out. You just need him to start being honest, to stop pretending, to acknowledge what's been true all along. And when that moment comes, when he finally says the words, when he admits he likes you, he wants you, he's felt you all along, when he finally breaks through his own resistance and allows himself to be vulnerable with you, your response matters more than you might realize. Not because you need to perform or say the right thing. Not because there's some perfect script you need to follow. Not because you need to manage his feelings or control the outcome, but because your response will set the tone for absolutely everything that comes next. Your response will establish the energetic foundation for what this connection will become. It will signal to him, to the universe, and most importantly to yourself, what you're actually available for now. If you respond from your old wounded place, from the part of you that's just relieved he finally admitted it, from the part that's been waiting so long to hear these words that you're willing to accept them on any terms, from the part that wants to immediately jump into trying to make it work without pausing to check in with yourself about what you actually need. You risk falling back into old patterns. You risk returning to the dynamic that didn't work before. You risk abandoning yourself in the exact moment when staying rooted in yourself matters most. You might find yourself immediately reassuring him, immediately making it easy for him, immediately taking responsibility for the emotional labor of figuring out what comes next. You might find yourself minimizing your own needs, rushing past your own boundaries, ignoring the voice inside you that's asking you to slow down and be intentional about this. And if you do that, if you respond from that wounded place, you'll be building on a foundation of your own self-abandonment, which means no matter how beautiful his words are, the structure won't hold. But if you respond from your healed sovereign place, from the part of you that's genuinely happy he's being honest, but also crystal clear about what you need, from the part that welcomes his truth while also honoring your own, from the part of you that has done the deep inner work and knows that a confession without aligned action is just words, you create the foundation for something real, something sustainable, something that honors both of you, something that doesn't require you to diminish yourself or manage his emotions or carry the relationship on your back. You create space for an actual partnership between two whole people, rather than a dynamic where you're once again contorting yourself to fit into whatever version of connection he's ready for. You might say something like, "I appreciate you being honest with me. I really do. I know this hasn't been easy for you, and I honor the courage it takes to be vulnerable like this. I've felt this connection too. I've felt it deeply. I've felt it all along, just like you have. And I also need you to know that I'm not the same person I was before. I'm not the woman you knew when this journey began. I've grown, I've changed, I've evolved. I've done deep work on myself. I've faced my shadows. I've healed my wounds. I've learned to love myself in ways I never did before. I've discovered my worth. I've strengthened my boundaries. I've learned what I'm truly available for and what I'm not. And I'm only interested in a connection that honors the woman I've become. I'm not interested in going back to old patterns or half commitments or uncertainty or breadcrumbs or confusion or inconsistency. I'm not interested in a connection where I'm doing all the emotional work while you figure yourself out. I'm not interested in being an option or a maybe or someone you keep on the back burner while you explore other possibilities. I'm interested in building something real with someone who's ready, someone who's done their work too, someone who's willing to meet me where I am, someone who understands that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice and a commitment and consistent, aligned action. So I need you to be sure. I need you to be ready. I need you to be willing to do your work too. I need you to be honest with yourself about whether you're actually prepared for what I'm offering, because what I'm offering is real partnership, real intimacy, real commitment, not the fantasy version, not the version where everything is easy and nothing triggers you and you never have to face your stuff, but the real version where we both show up fully, where we both take responsibility for ourselves, where we both choose each other consistently, even when it's challenging. Because I'm not going to abandon myself for this connection again. I'm not going to make myself small. I'm not going to dim my light. I'm not going to silence my needs. I'm not going to ignore my intuition. I'm not going to wait indefinitely while you figure yourself out. I'm not going to put my life on hold hoping you'll eventually be ready. I'm open to exploring this if you're genuinely ready, if you're truly available, if you're willing to match my energy and my commitment and my consistency. But I'm also completely okay if you're not, because my wholeness doesn't depend on you anymore. My happiness doesn't require your participation. My sense of self isn't contingent on your validation. I've built a beautiful life. I've cultivated deep self-love. I've created my own sense of completeness. And while I'm open to sharing that with you, I don't need you to complete me. I'm already whole. This kind of response, this boundaried openness, this combination of warmth and clarity, this is what sacred union requires. Not walls that keep him out, not defenses that punish him for his journey, not coldness that makes him feel rejected, but also not desperation that lets him in on any terms, not neediness that accepts whatever he's offering without checking if it actually aligns with what you need, not relief that causes you to abandon your standards just because he finally said the words you've been longing to hear, but clear, loving honesty about what you need and what you're available for. It tells him that you're interested but not desperate, that you value the connection but you value yourself more, that you're willing to explore union, but only if it's real union, not the old patterns dressed up in new words. Not the same dynamic with a fresh coat of paint. Not a relationship where you're once again carrying the emotional weight while he shows up inconsistently. This is the frequency of the divine feminine in her full power. She's not punishing him for his journey. She's not making him grovel or prove himself endlessly or jump through hoops to earn her attention. She's not playing games or manipulating or withholding or testing him, but she's also not abandoning her standards or her boundaries or her self-love just because he's finally ready to be honest. She's not so relieved that he's finally speaking his truth that she immediately accepts whatever he's offering without discernment. She's simply standing in her truth and inviting him to meet her there. She's being honest about what she needs and what she's available for and what she's not willing to compromise on anymore. And if he can't, if he's not actually ready for what she's offering, if he's still operating from his wounds rather than his wholeness, if he's still wanting connection on his terms without considering what she needs, she's genuinely okay. Not pretending to be okay. Not performing okayness while secretly hoping he'll change his mind, but authentically, deeply okay. Because she knows her worth isn't determined by his capacity. She knows her value isn't contingent on his readiness. She knows that his inability to meet her doesn't diminish her in any way. This is the final stage, the stage where his confession meets your sovereignty, where his awakening meets your embodiment, where his truth meets your boundaries, where his readiness meets your standards, where his vulnerability meets your clarity, where his opening meets your groundedness. And if both of you have done the work, if both of you have grown through this journey, if both of you have faced your shadows and healed your wounds and learned to love yourselves, if both of you are genuinely ready for sacred union, and not just the illusion of it, not just the fantasy, not just the idea of it, but the actual reality of two whole people coming together, this is where everything begins to align. Not perfectly, not without continued growth and challenges, not without triggers and difficult conversations and moments where you both have to choose love over fear, but authentically, honestly, from a foundation of two whole people choosing to build something together rather than two wounded people trying to heal each other. From a place of genuine readiness rather than desperate longing. From a place of mutual respect and clear communication and aligned values rather than confusion and inconsistency and unspoken expectations. So, beloved, let this be your reminder. The confession is coming. You feel it because it's real. The energy is building because he's finally breaking open. The shift is happening because the journey has brought both of you to this threshold. The universe is orchestrating this moment. Your inner work is creating the energetic space for his breakthrough. Your healing is catalyzing his awakening. Your sovereignty is calling forth his truth. But the confession isn't the destination. It's not the finish line. It's not the end of the journey. It's the doorway. It's the beginning of a new chapter. It's the threshold of possibility. And what matters most is not whether he walks through it, but whether you're still standing in your power when he does. Whether you've maintained your center throughout this entire journey. Whether you've kept choosing yourself even when it was hard. Whether you're genuinely ready for sacred union or just relieved that the waiting is over. Whether you're responding from your healed place or your wounded place. Whether you're willing to hold your boundaries or whether you'll abandon them the moment he says what you've been wanting to hear. Because union that's built on your relief rather than your sovereignty won't last. Union that's built on your desperation rather than your discernment will crumble. Union that's built on your willingness to abandon yourself rather than your commitment to honor yourself will eventually fall apart. But union that's built on two people who have each done their work, who each stand in their power, who each choose from wholeness rather than woundedness, who each take responsibility for themselves, who each show up with clarity and honesty and consistency. That union is unshakable. That union is sacred. That union is worth everything you've been through. That union is what this entire journey has been preparing you for. That union is the gift that comes from all the waiting and all the healing and all the growth and all the moments when you chose yourself even though it was hard. You are not just the doorway, you are the temple. You are not just waiting for union, you are embodying it. You are not just hoping he confesses, you are holding the frequency that makes confession inevitable. You are not just a passive recipient of his awakening, you are the catalyst for it. Your healing is creating the energetic space for his breakthrough. Your sovereignty is calling him into his truth. Your embodiment is showing him what's possible. And when he finally speaks his truth, you will meet it with your own. Not from neediness, not from fear, not from the old version of yourself that would have accepted anything, not from the part of you that would have immediately said yes without checking in with yourself, not from the part of you that would have abandoned your boundaries just to keep him close, but from the woman you've become, the woman who knows her worth, the woman who holds her boundaries, the woman who trusts her journey, the woman who understands that sacred union begins not when he confesses, but when she stops needing him too. The woman who has built a life she loves, the woman who has cultivated unshakable self-love, the woman who is genuinely whole on her own, and is simply open to sharing that wholeness with someone who's ready to meet her there. Tell me, beautiful soul, have you felt this shift in yourself? This movement from waiting to embodying, this transition from seeking his validation to standing in your own truth. Drop a comment and share what's changed in you during this journey. Your insight might be exactly what another soul needs to hear today to step into her own power.